Good morning, good morning. It's Wednesday Wisdom, and we're here with the beautiful Brenda Rogers. I'm loving these conversations, Brenda. They're so good for like this deep dive that we're going through.
Oh my gosh. My life is transforming at the moment. I don't know about yours is as well. Oh my gosh. And I'm sure all the ladies out there, it's just bang, 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 like this, right? And
yeah, I'm just wondering, should I actually share? I should. I'm going to announce it. I'm going to announce it. So I just had an amazing experience and was proposed to last night.
And accepted, of course.
Because, such a beautiful man that I've met. So, I got asked to be married last night. It was so romantic, just like the way we met. And I'm still going, like, look at me, I'm buzzing.
All the oxytocin.
Yeah. So I'll have to share more a little bit later. I'll do a Facebook Live about it or something because, as we were just talking about, I'm actually doing an event this month called Rewire Your Heart for Love. So how appropriate.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love month. And
love month, absolutely. And as you were saying, transformations, right?
100%.
So we're going to be talking about the heroine's journey today. And I know a little bit about, the hero's journey because it's something that I've been taught in my magnetic mind coaching.
And practically every Hollywood movie uses that formula.
Yes, yeah. The not knowing who you are and awakening to that process and becoming, the superhero or the
challenges and almost everything's lost, and then you come back and you save the day and
discover who you are and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And then
yes, and it all starts again, right? So can you share a little bit about the heroine's journey? Let's dive straight in about the heroine's journey and what we go through as women compared to men.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if it's actually about the inner masculine and the inner feminine ultimately.
Yeah.
Because I think that what I'm starting to see is that there's this dynamic in our own individual lives, but it's also potentially replicated in what's happening over the centuries, and so it's probably some kind of
absolutely
inherent cycle that the world is made up of. And I think the research came out early in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, when who was the author of the hero's journey? It was not Joseph Campbell. Who was it? Was it Joseph Campbell?
I think it was Joseph Campbell. Yeah.
I think anyway. One of the ladies that was working with him was called Maureen Murdoch, and she was kind of following along with his research and thought, well, actually, I don't think that's the same for women. It's not the same. And so she started going off on her tangent. And there's some famous quote that says that she asked Joseph about, but what about for women? What's the process for women? And he made some offhand comment about, well, women are already there. We're already enlightened. And I'm thinking, not me. I don't think so. So she started her own thinking around it, and she wrote her book on the heroine's journey. She called it The Heroine's Journey. And I believe that it was the 90s. And then there's been more research done around that. And there's kind of differing opinions, and it's kind of evolving as a theory and as a hypothesis. So I don't think there's any like this is it. This is what exactly.
It's a generalization, right? But as above, so below as well, because as you said, like there's this evolutionary process happening with our planet and the solar system, and like an awakening happening, and
100%. Yeah. So we've had patriarchy, right, for 3,000 years. And then there's the women's movement really started in the late 1800s with women getting the vote, and all of that kind of uprising actually started earlier than that. It was 1850s in America, and in France they were creating the kind of Bill of Rights and all that stuff that was going on in America at the time. And the Bill of Rights was like all men are equal and da 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 da, but it really meant men, and women were going, well, what about
us?
What about the slave? What about this? What about that? In France, they were having those kinds of conversations, and there were women starting to have a voice. And one particular woman in France who was particularly active, she got assassinated or executed for causing trouble. So, it's really wonderful to understand this history that has got us to this point, because we're resting on those laurels in some ways.
It's really important to actually know that, right? Because one of the things, I think we've touched on this before, one of the things that I've noticed is that women of today and the younger generation women of today don't have the knowledge of why we were fighting, because like there was a reason to stand up and like, one, we didn't have the vote, we didn't have any equality, but also if our husband died, our children were given to his brother's family. We didn't even have rights over our children, let alone to have personal money or all of those things that were so all of those things were why we were fighting. And then you get to my children's generation, where the kids have got they're just like, I'm a girl and I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And putting men down instead of understanding what the whole process is in the first place, or why there was a fight. They just saw my mum was fighting for her rights, and then but not realizing why.
Well, the way that I reconcile that is it's going to take maybe 500,000 years for it to shift. And so that's okay. What are we going to do about it? The women who are over 50 now, well, I was born in the 60s. So it was my mother's, the 70-year-old women, the 80-year-old women that were responsible for the second wave of feminism, with, political rights and, women's rights around the 60s and the 70s. So, we grew up with that being fairly, acceptable, not acceptable, but as a given, Yeah, I can go to work. I can vote. We assumed all those things. I mean, the Aboriginals only got the vote in the 1960s.
I know.
Imagine being an Aboriginal woman, how so anyway, we digress.
I was thinking that.
Let's come back to that, because it is a passion of mine, and it is where I'm heading in my business. I realize that even our conversations, Liz, have really helped, because it's in having a voice and in speaking these things out that they become clearer and they start to crystallize and
process. Inspiration comes, and absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So my quick understanding or description of the heroine's journey is pretty much we're in kind of neutral territory. So we're not really feminine, we're not really masculine, we're fully integrated, really. And then at some point there's the split. We split into the feminine first because we become teenagers, but there's a split at some point. Using the life of a woman as an example, some point towards the late teens, there's a split away from the feminine, from our mothers and from our bodies. They're all connected. They're all connected. So there's a lot of body stuff in this heroine's journey and a woman's relationship to her body. And then she splits from the feminine and identifies with the masculine. So she becomes a daddy's girl or a Joan of Arc like her dad, or whatever, that, identifies with the masculine. It's all quite yang, and all very normal. None of this is wrong, right? None of this.
No, it's just the process of evolving, really. Yeah.
It's a bit like in the spiritual concepts we talk about, when we're in heaven or not.
Creative spirit is what I call it. Yeah.
Sky, whatever. We're all one, right? And we have to split from that to become individuals incarnated on the earth. We go from this place of non-duality, so there's everything is all at once everywhere, into a reality that is black and white, tall and short, fat and thin, all that kind of stuff. And so it's in the splitting from that we get to experience ourselves. We
have something to relate to, right? Yeah.
Contrast. And the process of life is to fully experience ourselves. Similarly, and I believe this heroine's journey is kind of a roadmap in a way for that process. And so, but eventually, as we identify with the masculine, eventually that sort of runs out of gas and we start to feel betrayed. And it kind of looks like the patriarchy, or, our fathers or something like that. And we start to...
That's the burn the bra state, aspect of life.
Yeah, and it's really difficult. I often think of perimenopause as this time where we're starting to kind of go, because and we'll go into this perhaps in more detail, but it can be, the not good enough thing, all that stuff comes up. And so we split away from the masculine. We then separate and split from the masculine. And then it takes a while, but we have to re-identify with the feminine. And, that can be a little bit of a process because we have all these opinions about what women are.
Yes. Yeah.
Why would I waste my time in the kitchen? Why,
Yeah. And all of the social conditioning of, it's weak to be vulnerable. It's, don't cry, suck it up, all those things that we've got to break free of as well, on top of that. Yeah. And discover what is feminine, what is, where is my role in this? Who am I in all these layers, yeah.
And unfortunately in our culture, we don't really have a sense of that. So it's very difficult because you're kind of relearning everything. So if we had an understanding of our menstrual cycle, for example, and we learned that as a teenager and the power of that and the process of that. So that's a 4-week process that goes like that. Each month we go like that. If we understood that and what that meant for our own self-development, for our own power, for our own meeting our needs and all that kind of thing, we wouldn't struggle so much in our 50s when it's kind of like, well, you don't even have a menstrual cycle anymore. We kind of have to quickly relearn all of that feminine stuff and what it means to be a woman, because women are so powerful. That's why they're called witches, right? That's why they're called hags and crones, and they're terrifying. Think of all the mythology around the older woman, all those fairy tales that depict older women as magical and scary and dark and eating children and like that. That's because that is really not all of that negativity stuff, that dark stuff necessarily, although it is the
they're friggin' powerful, right? We're powerful beings, and like that's when our lioness, if we're in that beautiful natural cycle and we're not caught up in the conditioning and like who I should be, when we go into that natural breaking down of who am I, that's where the lioness comes out, right? Like she feels comfortable standing in her strength, and she's starting to really recognize her boundaries, and she like don't fuck with stuff, right? Like very gentle, sweet, loving, transparent, vulnerable. But muck around with her or her kids, watch out.
Well, I just watched
Avatar. Man, by the way.
Just watched Avatar, the new one, over the weekend.
Oh, isn't it amazing?
And that mother, I've forgotten her name, but she's a great depiction of the gentle nurturer and the fierce protector. And even the way they do that, that hissing thing is so great, so great.
Yeah.
Mind you, it's a very violent movie, so it kind of shocked me a little bit, but it just illustrates that point that you're making. We can be so fierce, and it is inherently wired into us to be protective of children, protective of the community, protective of grandchildren by the time you get to 50s and 60s. So that there's kind of this really important missing thing in our culture, that women in their 50s and 60s aren't being that fierce protectress, aren't being the activist heart that they are. That's my mission and purpose in life, is to awaken those activist hearts in women. And I because we see that injustice very acutely, it's the exquisite pain that we have of what's happening in the world, and then of course it's coming up with, what am I going to do about it? What's my contribution going to be? But anyway, we re-identify.
Let's bookmark that, because I want to share something about that too.
Sure.
But keep going.
So by the time you're getting into your 50s and 60s, it can be, it really is enough to heal the feminine wound. And that's heal your body, your relationship to your body, and your relationship to your mother. Those things need to happen for this wound, this feminine wound, to heal. And then we need to heal the masculine wound. We don't become the masculine, but we need to heal that betrayal of the masculine. And that takes a little while. And then ultimately you get the both healed, and you get the sacred union. And, wouldn't that be nice if that's when you decide that you won't wake up the next day?
Yeah.
Pop off to heaven.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't need 5 years of cancer to go,
That's right. Yeah. That's the way I'm leaving. I already see it. I already see that moment, laying in bed with my children with me and saying, I really, really had fun. It was a great trip, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, same, right?
Yeah. And so, it's.
I want to go to that bookmark, back to that bookmark. I know you're going to share a story, and
no, that's where I was going, was that bookmark, because I've got to think about what I was going to say, because I was thinking about the activist heart, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because we also need to be aware of the definitions that we've had placed on words.
Yes.
Because activism can have connotations that can be scary to the woman that's waking up and is still working with her good girl, people pleaser, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, and I'm submissive, or I've been submissive in whatever roles, right?
Yeah.
And so that can be scary to think, well, no, I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be aggressive. Like we've been conditioned to believe that there's an aggression to that sort of thing. And it actually doesn't have to be, and it actually isn't when it's in the natural state of balance. It's a beautiful, just from my own experience, this beautiful expansion of energy strength within your auric field, right? That's one of the first things that creates this, I'm now understanding my boundaries a bit more. And so I can feel what's right for me, what's wrong for me, and I'm starting to feel comfortable to express it. But in that expression, you can actually be strong and empowered in that activism and say, actually, no. It doesn't have to be with force. It doesn't have to be with, any sort of aggression. It can, but it can also just be this really like, well, this is who I am, and I'm saying no to this particular situation or this particular way I've been treated or whatever it might be, and just standing really strong and firm in that.
Well, I think we have to own our anger.
Yes.
It's if you are the sweet girl still, then because we're all angry. Anger is a normal human emotion designed predominantly to protect boundaries. I mean, other things, well, but also, like, I want to bring this up for the woman on the other side of that. Can you see that can be scary for someone that's still in their people pleaser? And never get to that anger on that other side. But I see it, I see it in clinic, and you probably see it as well.
Yeah.
People think they're not angry.
Yeah.
But then they'll eat 2 tons of chocolate. What do you think that is?
Yeah.
I mean, it's inwardly directed. It's inwardly directed, but still like a fuck you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, the only way to get out of that is to get depressed.
Yeah.
And then you don't feel anything.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But I hear you. It is scary, and it's not like you introduce you introduce a child to the Kama Sutra, it's like you start you start, there's a long process that there's, I don't know why I use that analogy.
It was a great one. You know what? And it sort of, it fits. I didn't know whether to share with it or not. But in my 20s, I read a pretty intense book from Alice Walker. She was one of my amazing authors that I still love her work. So if anyone that doesn't know Alice Walker, she actually is the author of The Colour Purple, the book, not the movie, and it's got some amazing. She's a African-American activist woman, and I read this book called it was an essay that she did with someone about female mutilation and a female circumcision and the sexual binding of women. It was pretty intense. But in my 20s, that's where I was at. And I remember in that book specifically them talking about where it started, female circumcision started, was way back that they felt that the clitoris, men thought that the clitoris would grow razor sharp teeth and engulf them, right? So this similar to that hag and the witch and all, like the fierceness, they saw the power of women even in their maiden, energy, and had to control it in some way.
Man, and that is the underlying thing of misogyny. That is men are terrified of women, and if you ask a man, they wouldn't say so. But in the background, in the ether, is that, and that's, we need to shift that. But let me ask you a question: would you consider yourself an activist?
I suppose I would, actually. I've never thought of it. Yeah, absolutely. I know. I've never thought of it and defined it that way, but yeah,
it's all about transformation. It's all about righting wrongs, in a sense. It's about empowerment. That is activism.
Yes.
That is seeing something in the world that just doesn't feel right and doing something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting yourself to a point, because we don't start there. It's like you're talking about. You don't start there with suddenly knowing what's wrong in the world and having the courage and the wisdom to know what to do about it. You start with kind of your own, like, oh my God, I'm suffering so badly. Let me sort myself out.
Yes.
And eventually it becomes, I've got myself a certain way along the path. Let me start to help others. That's
yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think my own belief is that we need to encourage that. We need to facilitate that. We need to promote that the awakening of the activist heart. And
yes.
We don't need to, but I think it's
well. I think it's important. I think that it's definitely part of the growth and experience of healing for men and women as we move into more unity, as we, experience ourselves as a species instead of two halves, as we evolve in I listened to this amazing podcast actually that gave me a lot of hope for the future. And that's where we're heading. We're heading into this communication and feminine balance, for men and women and the planet. And so the more we can understand the feminine and that it isn't just this submissive, again, the definitions that we have around words that have been, so tainted in the years of what this is and what that is and how we define it as a society.
Yeah.
But to stand up and be strong and make those little steps that you're talking about, where am I? What is my boundaries? What do I feel is right for me? And then be able to express that, and the need to get aggressive if it's there in your system, right? If it's there, allowing that out. And as I think you're right, it's definitely part of the cycle, right, of having your voice heard in, out there in the world.
Well, thank you for representing those women who may be struggling with that. And, if there's anyone listening that is struggling with boundaries, struggling with standing up for herself, struggling with
having a voice,
meeting her own needs, having a voice, I think it's, we hear you. We've got
because one of the things, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is because one of the things that I've noticed is and I don't know where I've noticed, actually, like it's more an intuitive thing, is that there's this, we either have to be suppressed or we have to be aggressive, like, and like the men in a way, you know, like, and it doesn't have to be an either or. It's finding.
Why are you concerned about that particularly?
Well, because I feel like there's a collective that I'm plugging into somehow that is trying to find that gentle medium, but having this definition block them.
Yeah.
And not being able to know how to express.
Yeah.
That, not knowing there's this middle ground of actually, well, it comes up with my 3 powers, right? The 3 powers that I talk about: power, powerless, and empowerment. So when you're, you know, like, you're powerless because you're submissive, or you're aggressive because you're trying to power over, it's being able to step into that higher fulcrum, you know, the fulcrum of the pendulum, and be in your own center and go, this is what I feel, this is who I am, these are my boundaries, don't fuck with me. Like, and being able to voice that's still letting that energy out, right? And being able to do that with a strength and force and empowerment that, you know, maybe can bring, you know, have aggression in it, maybe not. But that takes a lot of work, right, to get to that point as well. Being able to, you know, get out of that swing of the pendulum and recognize the internal self-generated energy of the empowered woman. Yeah.
So what's your question in all of that, do you think?
I don't know if there is a question.
Sounds like it.
Well, okay, so how do women find that middle ground and be self-expressing?
Yeah.
Like, if they've got anger, where are they directing that anger is one question. Like, because we don't want to create a war, right? Like, we don't want to be, we want to be able to self-express. We want our needs met. We want our community safe. We want our world to be beautiful. Where is this aggression being expressed in a healthy way?
Well, aggression isn't healthy.
Well, this anger is what, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, you use the beautiful analogy of the fulcrum and the pendulum. I've had this experience this week. In fact, I you know, it's not just things that happen to us weekly, but, you know, you'll notice in your own process and your process, and then anyone who's listening, that things can happen for months, you know. And I've been going through this process of being knocked over the head by one thing after the other, you know, like I think I used the example of standing in the shallows at the beach and being literally hit by one dumper after the other. And this morning I was on a call, a group of women call, and this woman was giving me all this advice, what I should do, and I went, and I just blurted all this out. I'm so frustrated, you know, that frustration is you know, it's where the pendulum hits almost like that point where the force to come back starts. So it's super, super important to let yourself get so.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And then for somebody to say to you, darling, you're being a victim. or done. It's no
What are
one's
you going to do about it? Yeah.
no one's coming to rescue. There's no knight in white, knight in shining armor. There's no one's coming.
Yeah.
You stop waiting, stop blaming, stop and the frustration of so above, so below, you said, but so outside, so within, right?
Yes.
So my frustration is this and this and this, but really it's with myself. And what I discovered is that I'm playing way too small. I'm spending all this effort in creating this and this and this for this much money and for this much money. And when there's this big, hairy, audacious goal just in this cloud just over my head, and I'm going, oh no, that's not me. Who am I? And increasingly, the more I resist, the angrier I get.
Yeah, because you're pushing against your creation through your identity, right? Yeah.
Resistance never works. Resistance is futile. And I was reading about yin yoga the other day because I'm starting a weekly yin yoga class, and yin yoga has this concept of yielding about it. And yielding is like coming to your resistance and then just kind of melting. It's kind of like, rather, if you come to your resistance and you
push up against it.
Often we do, say to my husband, you should, like, that doesn't work. That doesn't, it's a different example, but yes, you're right. And so it's like we need to get so frustrated with ourselves before anything changes. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to be at the end, the top of the swing of the pendulum.
Yeah.
But that's when something shifts. That's when we're so over it. And one of the things that I'm realizing, especially as I'm getting older, I was thinking, I don't have time to fluff about.
Yeah.
I don't have time to take the job that's like the temporary job that, is going to, until I work it out. I don't have to faff about, because I'm 60 in a blink of an eye.
And not only that, there's something happening right now on the planet, and you're feeling it. We're all feeling it, right? There's a new wave. There's a new way of being, and it's being birthed. And so your calling is now. And so, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because, and what you're just saying, and we've gone over, so we should wrap it up, because we'll have to do maybe part 2 of this.
People have lives.
Yeah. But what I'm hearing you say is being in the feminine and using that masculine energy that we have of action, because that force that comes with being frustrated then takes you into some sort of action. Like there's a pushing movement to that, and using that's why masculine and feminine are so interwoven in who we are, because using that energy to propel forward and work out what the shit is that you're dealing with, and going forward from there.
And that is a nice segue into the next topic, because it really is a topic around yin and yang, feminine and masculine. What is feminine power and what is feminine action?
Yes.
Action isn't always the doing like a male does.
Yeah.
It can be, but there's an invitation to sort of the wisdom, a wiser way of doing things. So the action might be in setting this up and setting this, maybe creating an environment rather than doing the doing. So
I think that's I think that's going to be a beautiful topic for next week, right?
Well, can I just finish with something?
Yes.
Do you mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
I've got this beautiful book.
Yes.
Goddesses in Old Women, for us over 50s. And this is my message for today. Women who have grown older and wiser have maternal common sense and can see how much of the origins of the ills of a community as well as nations can be traced to whether its children are wanted, loved, healthy, and safe from abuse, have learned impulse control and compassion, and are given opportunities commensurate with their abilities. So women need those three things. We need opportunities, we need impulse control and compassion, and we need to have our children be loved and healthy and safe. So for us, it is obvious that the well-being of children is related to the well-being of their mothers.
Yes, yeah.
In turn, depends on how women are treated. And grandmothers as well, right? In the latter part of the 20th century and at the beginning of the 21st, which we're in now, the correlation is finally being voiced, but not yet heeded. That's what we're about. That's what I'm about.
That's what's happening at the moment. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's happening in the world right now. That's the third way to feminism, and it's sacred wisdom. It's sacred and it's wisdom. So
yeah, absolutely beautiful. It's such a it's so fun to be on the journey, right? Like to have chosen this time and space to go through and experience it. So thank you. That was so good. We could just keep going like
every week.
Yeah. We will pause there and so next week let's do yin and yang energy and the masculine and feminine. I think that was a beautiful topic for next week. So love to everyone that's watching. Please add your comments and let us know what your thoughts are as we went through that process and what you agree with, disagree with, want to add your 2 cents into. Thank you so much, Brenda, and we will catch up next week.
Thanks for the opportunity to have a voice.
Yeah,
Bye, everyone.
it's beautiful.